You have completed Chapter 4. Your themes are presented, your participant quotes are in place, and your findings are documented. Now you are facing Chapter 5, and the central question is clear. How does this chapter differ from what has already been written? The transition from Chapter 4 to Chapter 5 is not a continuation. It is a fundamental shift in purpose, voice, and function. Understanding this shift before you begin writing is essential to producing a chapter that meets academic expectations. This video is part 3 of the Qualitative Thematic Analysis series. In part 1, we discussed how to move from codes to clear themes. In part 2, we covered how to write those themes academically for Chapter 4. This video assumes your Chapter 4 is complete or near completion. Our focus here is on understanding how Chapter 5 functions, how it differs from Chapter 4, and how to transition from description to interpretation with clarity and academic precision. Let us begin. Section 1. The Purpose Shift. Chapter 4 versus Chapter 5. To write Chapter 5 effectively, you must first understand how its purpose differs from Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is your findings chapter. Its function is to report what emerged from your data. You describe themes, present participant quotes, and document patterns across the dataset. You are reporting evidence without explaining what it means. Chapter 5 is your interpretation chapter. Its function shifts from reporting to meaning-making. You explain what the themes mean, why they are significant, and how they relate to existing scholarship. Chapter 4 answers the question, "What did I find?" Chapter 5 answers the question, "What does it mean?" This distinction changes your voice, your language, and your relationship with the data. In Chapter 4, the data speaks. In Chapter 5, the researcher explains. Without maintaining this boundary, the two chapters lose their structural and functional clarity. Section 2. What interpretation means and what it does not. Interpretation is frequently misunderstood in dissertation writing. Clarity on its boundaries is essential before writing Chapter 5. Interpretation means making meaning from your findings. It involves examining your themes and explaining their significance. Why did this pattern emerge? What does it indicate about the phenomenon under study? How does this finding relate to what prior researchers have established? Interpretation is analytical and grounded. It requires critical engagement with findings and positioning them within the broader scholarly conversation. What interpretation does not mean is equally important. Interpretation does not mean introducing new data. No new quotes, no new themes, and no new participant information should appear in Chapter 5. All discussion refers back to findings already presented in Chapter 4. Interpretation does not mean speculation. Analytical claims must be grounded in the data and supported by existing literature. There is a clear distinction between a reasoned scholarly interpretation and an unsupported assertion. Interpretation does not mean personal commentary. While the researcher's analytical perspective is present in Chapter 5, it must remain scholarly. Subjective reactions without evidentiary support are not appropriate. Understanding these boundaries makes interpretation more precise and more purposeful. Section 3. How Chapter 5 is structured. Chapter 5 follows a logical structure that moves from summary to interpretation to broader implications. The first component is a brief summary of findings. Begin by restating the key themes from Chapter 4. This is a concise overview. State the themes without reintroducing quotes or detailed descriptions. The purpose is to orient the reader before interpretation begins. The second component is interpretation by theme. This is the core of Chapter 5. Each theme is discussed individually, addressing 3 key questions. What does this theme mean in the context of this study? Why is it significant? How does it align with or differ from prior research? This section is where findings connect to the literature reviewed in Chapter 2. Where results support existing research, explain how they reinforce established knowledge. Where results diverge, offer possible explanations grounded in the data and study context. Maintain the same theme order used in Chapter 4 to preserve structural consistency. The third component involves implications and limitations. Implications address the broader significance of the findings for practice, policy, and education. What should practitioners, policymakers, or educators consider based on these results? Limitations address the boundaries of the study with scholarly transparency. Factors such as sample size, methodological constraints, or contextual boundaries that may affect transferability should be acknowledged directly. This demonstrates academic rigor and intellectual honesty. This structure of summary, interpretation, and implications provides a clear and defensible framework for Chapter 5. Section 4. The language shift from description to interpretation. One of the most practical indicators of the transition from Chapter 4 to Chapter 5 is the language used. In Chapter 4, language is descriptive. Phrases such as participants described, several participants noted, and a pattern emerged across interviews report findings without attaching meaning. In Chapter 5, language becomes interpretive. Phrases such as these findings suggest, this theme aligns with existing research on, this finding extends prior studies by, and one possible explanation for this pattern is reflect analytical engagement with the data. Section 5. Common mistakes to avoid. Several recurring mistakes affect the quality of Chapter 5 in qualitative dissertations. The first is repeating Chapter 4. Restating findings in detail without adding interpretation does not fulfill the purpose of Chapter 5. If themes are being described again without explanation of their meaning, the chapter is repeating rather than advancing. The second is introducing new data. All evidence belongs in Chapter 4. Chapter 5 discusses that evidence at a deeper analytical level. New quotes or themes in Chapter 5 indicate a structural error. The third is disconnecting from literature. Chapter 5 is where findings meet existing scholarship. Interpretation without reference to prior research lacks the scholarly grounding that academic committees expect. Each theme should connect to relevant literature. The fourth is overinterpreting. Interpretive claims must remain within the boundaries of what the data supports. Broad generalizations or claims that extend beyond the findings weaken the scholarly credibility of the chapter. The fifth is inconsistent structure. Each theme should be discussed in a parallel manner throughout Chapter 5. Structural consistency demonstrates methodological discipline and enhances readability for both committee members and broader academic audiences. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 are partners, not competitors. Chapter 4 presents findings. Chapter 5 makes meaning from those findings. When description remains where it belongs and interpretation remains where it belongs, the dissertation becomes clear, aligned, and defensible. The transition between these chapters is not about changing the data. It is about changing the lens, moving from documenting what participants shared to explaining what those findings indicate for the field, for practice, and for future research. Thank you for watching.